This meeting is called to order at 7 o'clock. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Remind everybody that we are being broadcast live over Van Buren Television Channel 12. Secretary Montgomery, would you please take the roll?
My pleasure. Trustee Frazier. Here. Trustee Martin.
Here.
Treasurer Bud.
Here.
Supervisor McNamara.
Here.
Trustee Miller.
Here.
Trustee White.
Present.
Clerk Wright is excused. You have a quorum.
Thank you. First item is a short synopsis, executive summary to explain what we do here for our audience that's on television. The first thing we'll be discussing is that today we're going to be doing a short presentation which will be made on our summer youth program called The Real. The kids are looking forward to a few more projects. If you have any ideas of projects that you want to have done, let us know. Today we will also be discussing our 2017 township audit, which was conducted by the accounting company of Plant Moran. This audit and board discussion will take place as a presentation. This will sum up our last year's budget and the reviews and the actions of the departments and how we tabulated everything. The township will also be tonight making a final determination on whether it will join a lawsuit to sue opioid manufacturers and distributors regarding the crisis of opioid addiction and deaths in all of our communities. The board will also look to approve the DDA's request to amend the DDA's budget by $25,000 to pay dues to continue its relationship with Wayne County Airtropolis. Airtropolis is here, and they will be giving an update presentation to the board tonight also. And lastly, we will be doing the first of two votes this week and then 2 weeks from now, and that will be to rezone what's known as the Harold Smith Farm on Michigan Avenue. Again, this will be two votes. Today will be a first vote. In 2 weeks will be a second vote, should it pass. Moving forward. We start with the adoption of the revised agenda. Can I get a motion to adopt?
Make a motion to adopt. Support.
I have a motion by Trustee Miller and supported by Treasurer Bud. Do I hear any comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? This motion is approved. The next is adoption of the revised consent agenda. Trustee Martin, would you make the motion?
I move that we adopt the revised consent agenda consisting of number 1, work study session minutes of June 4, 2018, closed session minutes of June 4, 2018, board meeting minutes of June 5th, 2018, prepaid list of June 7, 2018, prepaid list of June 14th, 2018, voucher list of June 19, 2018. Number 7, approval of leasing a portion of the old fire hall located at 130 4th Street, Belleville, to O'Neill Construction Incorporated for a term of 20 months.
Support.
I have a motion by Trustee Martin. It's supported by Treasurer Bud. This is not a debate, so all in favor? Aye. Opposed? This motion passes. Next, we come down to public hearing, which we have none. We're now into correspondence, announcements, and presentations. We're going to begin with the project Real. Real is our summer youth employment program. And Director Sumter, would you please come up and give us an update?
Good evening, Board of Trustees. How are you today? Just wanted to give you a quick update on the program this year. Probably earlier, a couple of months ago, you all got this booklet kind of giving you a gist of the schedule, how we were hiring the kids this year, which they did live cover letters. So they actually recorded themselves on Vimeo and YouTube and explained why they wanted to be in the program this year. So it's pretty cool because the kids are very creative, I find. Out of the 44 people that actually submitted cover letters, we chose 12 for camp counselors. We chose 18 for the community ambassadors and junior organizational assistants that works with us, as well as BAM, Katie Dallas. 3 were declined. They said they had other things to do after learning about what the job entailed. And we had 11 that were not accepted into the program. So they weren't really ready to get into a job right now. The program consists still of doing landscaping and lawn work for senior citizens in the area, as well as working with our Parks and Rec department as camp counselors in training. They'll also be working with Katie Dallas, like I just said, working on this huge project of relabeling and doing a lot of exhibits for her this year. So they'll be going down there as a group periodically throughout the summer, getting this completed for possibly the end of the year. We do have something a little different. Last year, the kids were focused on what we do as municipal government workers. That was their career tours. This year, we're sending them out into the community, and they're going to be sitting and learning about some of our larger organizations within Van Buren Township. Some of those companies are DTE, which is their first career tour, June 27th. They'll be working with Culver's business owner. They'll be learning about franchising. This one's going to be interesting. They'll be going out to the Wayne County Airport, learning about diversity and inclusion in every job that is out there at the airport, because most of the kids just think it's the flight attendant, pilot, the person that checks your luggage. Excuse me. They're going to learn about every position that they can get at the airport this year. They'll also be working with U.S. Ecology and Waste Management, where they'll do tours there. And they'll be learning about our high school dual enrollment with Belleville High School. So they'll be going out with Amy, our fire chief, and Liam Carroll out at Schoolcraft this year. So they'll be learning a lot. In addition to that, they still have the Young Professionals Conference downtown. We don't know exactly where it'll be yet, but it'll probably be at the Coble Center like last year. We just haven't gotten confirmation on the location. The biggest thing that everybody's excited about is the project management and training, the project management and leadership training they have this year. They'll take a cardboard box and they're going to turn it into a boat. They have to do this as a team. And they have to put a person in that boat, and it has to go from one side of the pool to the other side of the pool. So there'll be teams going against each other, and the kids are really excited, and you all are invited to come. It'll be July 31st at the Holiday Inn Express.
Through the chair. Who thought of that? That's genius.
Me. So the kids are really looking forward to that. We're also setting their schedules this year, where they're going out at certain times during the day for the senior citizens. So if you all know of anyone who's looking for lawn care, 55 years or older, let me know. I have a couple of slots that need to be filled. The goal is to do at least 36 projects this year. So you have anything, please contact me, okay? In addition to that, last year, all of the directors, including some that are sitting here today, we all were the supervisors of the kids last year. This year, I've hired 4 college students, 3 from Eastern Michigan, 1 from Wayne State. They'll be the supervisors that will be going out with our children this year. They have an additional layer to their program as well. William Gregg and Layla Khorshid are going for environmental science as well as engineering. They'll be working with Fishbeck, Thompson, Carr, and Huber, I believe it is, 4 hours a week, because they have an additional 4 hours, 24 hours over the 6-week period, to get hands-on training with the careers that they're going into this year. Courtney Pace will be working with our cable department because she's going for communication and media, so she'll be working with Allie and her team as well. Angelica Heath is a teacher. Couldn't really place her anywhere, so we got a CPR class that she needed through our fire station. So that's it. If you have any questions.
Trustee Martin and then Trustee Miller.
I'd like to, first of all, thank Director Sumter for this program. I see you have put a lot of time and effort and thought into getting our youth jobs and actually real-life training and learning that will help them throughout their careers. I really appreciate it. This is one of the greatest things that we've seen in Van Buren Township. I'd just like to personally thank you.
Trustee Miller.
So I'd like to ask you, what is the biggest challenge that you face with the REAL program?
Dealing with the children's schedules. We're with the new generation now who everything's on their time. So they want to work, but they don't want to work. They want to work, but they want to have their vacation time. They want to have their flex time. They want to be able to get up later. So just trying to juggle our schedule with their schedule has been the biggest challenge this year.
And when will you go downtown for the final presentation?
July 27th. July 27th.
Okay,
Yep,
all right. Thank you.
no problem.
Anyone else? Thank you, Director. That was wonderful.
No
That was a
problem.
great
Thank you.
program. Our next presentation is going to be an Airtropolis update. This is regarding whether or not we're going to approve the DDA's request to pay $25,000 to maintain our Airtropolis, their Airtropolis, which we're co-signers with. Director Ireland?
Good evening. Everybody can hear me okay? Okay.
No, spend the magnifying.
Yeah, it's kind of quiet today.
Hello? Now? You can hear? One of the, Mr. Rob Luce is here. He is the executive director of the Detroit area Airtropolis. Is it? Well, we'll just call it Airtropolis. And he actually has been the executive director for a little over a year. And for 2018, the DDA and the Township Board did not approve putting $25,000 in the DDA line item to pay for the dues because they wanted to know what are we getting for our money. So on September 5th, Mr. Luce of last year, he appeared before this body and he provided an explanation of what was going on, what some of his goals were, and in particularly that he wanted to make an amendment to the interlocal agreement, which would allow each participating community the ability to be a voting member. And that actually, the revised interlocal agreement went before this body on November 20th of last year, and it's finally been voted into place by all the participating communities, and I think it went official on June 7th, so now Supervisor is a voting member on the Airtropolis Board. And as promised, Mr. Luce came to our DDA meeting in May, and they did recommend that we request that you also concur with approving dues and making the appropriate budget amendment. And Mr. Luce has come back as promised, and he will provide you with a short presentation.
Director Lewis.
Good evening, board members. Nice to see you all once again. As requested last evening at your work study session, happy to be back here this evening to provide an update before you and the citizens of Van Buren Township. We appreciate your continued participation in the Airtropolis and your patience with the Airtropolis over the years. I feel very good with where the organization is to date and what our strategic priorities are for the future, and I would like to provide you with a fairly modified update that I gave last night. So just to tie a bow on 2017, we closed last year having worked on 51 projects, and to put that into some perspective, we started the year with 3 projects in our pipeline, so exponential growth from a business development standpoint. Much of that growth was due to new and improved relationships with the state of Michigan, Wayne and Washtenaw County, and some of the other business development organizations that we work with on a day-to-day basis, and I'll get into that a little bit later. Year to date, we've worked on 14 projects in Van Buren Township, and on those 14 projects, we've submitted 21 sites, mostly vacant land sites, but 21 sites on those 14 projects from Van Buren Township. Sticking with the business development theme, we've already attended 15 trade shows or business conferences this year, 8 in the past 4 months alone. Most recently, I was in China for the Beijing Auto Show. It's one of the biggest auto shows in the world, and there's a lot of interest in the Chinese automotive industry investing into the North American market, specifically Michigan, given our automotive expertise here, and happened to come back with an immediate need. There's a Chinese-based OEM that's looking to open up a North American tech center, and they were having some difficulty finding an existing facility, and fortunately Van Buren Township had two, and within the past 3 or 4 weeks that company has toured the buildings in Van Buren Township, and a proposal is pending, so fingers crossed on that one. Some other more recent business development activity. Just last week, we partnered with the state of Michigan on what they call a site selector FAM tour. That's when they bring in site selectors that advise companies on their expansion projects. They bring these site selectors into the market to tour the market, see sites, get familiar with the market. The focus for this FAM tour was the city of Detroit specifically, but we were able to partner with the MEDC and host the site selectors at the airport when they landed last Tuesday afternoon. We gave them, kind of the overall pitch on the Aerotropolis, what our assets are, what the opportunities are, and then we got in a bus and toured them around the region. We showed them a site in each community. The site that we looked at in Van Buren Township was the 440-acre site at the corner of Belleville Road and E-Course. We've also been much more aggressive, if that's the right word, with the foreign chambers of commerce in Michigan. A lot of these organizations bring in delegations from their respective countries, Germany, France, Japan, China. Throughout the year, these are companies that have self-selected themselves from an interest in investing in Michigan standpoint and have the potential to be tremendous lead generators for the Aerotropolis, so we're much more engaged with them than we were in the past. We're currently working a project which is going to come before you this evening from a conditional rezone standpoint. I won't go too into the weeds there. There's still a lot of confidentiality, but suffice it to say the Aerotropolis brought that project to Van Buren Township. We submitted sites candidly in both Wayne and Washtenaw County, being that we represent both of those two counties, and the client wanted to know a little bit more information on the Van Buren Township property. We made the connection, and Supervisor McNamara and Mr. Akers have been knocking it out of the park from a day-to-day operations project management standpoint. It really is a case study, that's the word that I've been using, in how the Aerotropolis can work with the local municipalities that it represents. We help generate interest, and it's up to the local municipalities and the counties to close the deal and get the project across the finish line. Kind of shifting away from business development now, I think I mentioned when I was here last that one of the priorities for the Aerotropolis was to increase private sector participation in the organization. One of the reasons that the Aerotropolis never really got off the ground is because it wasn't funded to do what it was created to do, quite frankly, and there needs to be private sector monies to help fund a proactive business development program, and I'm proud to say that we've recently recruited our first private sector investor in almost 10 years. That's CBRE. They are a prominent commercial real estate firm, if you're not familiar, and we've already yielded fruits from that relationship in just a few short months. Susan mentioned the amendment to the Aerotropolis ILA. Our ILA stands for Interlocal Agreement. It is essentially the Articles of Incorporation of the Aerotropolis. Won't go too into the weeds, but it was somewhat of a convoluted system, and now we have a much clearer system, and Supervisor McNamara, as the representative to our board representing Van Buren Township, has much more of a say, as a voting interest now in the day-to-day operation and strategic direction of the Aerotropolis, so Van Buren Township's interests are better represented than they were previously. All of you should have received an invitation to the annual event that we hosted in March at the airport. That was about 3 months ago. We invited all of the elected bodies from all of the communities and the counties that we represent, as well as appointees to the various finance and development boards, so the TIFAs, the DDAs, the LDFAs. About 150, 200 people total. We got roughly half that in the room. I think it was a good event for a first-time event. It was the first time that we'd ever tried anything like this. Really meant to educate the stakeholders of the Aerotropolis on what it is we do, essentially giving them the update that I'm giving you now, and By all indications, everyone was pleased, and the takeaway for me for this event was, we surveyed all of the attendees after the fact, as most organizations do after an annual event. And one of the questions that we asked is, is your perception of the Aerotropolis improved, having come and heard, what it is we're up to? And 96% of the respondents indicated that they have had an improved perception of the Aerotropolis. So we're very, very happy with that. One of the takeaways from the annual event was our annual report. This was also a first-time publication for us, but it summarizes everything that we did and achieved in 2017. That annual report has been mailed to all of you, hard copy. You should have received a copy by now. But more importantly, it's been downloaded from our website at a rate of roughly 2 clicks a day for the past 3 months. So it's getting a lot of traction online in a digital format. Real quickly, just to kind of close out 2017, I mentioned the number of projects that we worked on, but our big wins last year were Amazon, Penske, and Broza. Those were 3 big projects that we worked on in the Aerotropolis region in partnership with the local municipalities, Wayne County and the state of Michigan. Collectively, those 3 companies created almost 2 million square feet of new industrial space, invested almost $350 million collectively, and created 2,300 jobs. So that's a very big year for a small organization like the Aerotropolis. We've also secured state support for the first time in our history. I think that's something we talked about last time I was here. It's hard to call yourself a regional economic development program if the state of Michigan doesn't know you exist. And now they not only know we exist, but they're helping fund the organization and are part of our board of directors now. Lastly, Two last things. We have finalized the establishment of an Aerotropolis LDFA. Again, this is not something that I'm going to go too into the weeds on tonight because it's a pretty deep rabbit hole, but essentially it operates much like your DDA does. It's a tax capture vehicle that can be used for public infrastructure projects, and we think it's something that Van Buren Township could and should use to get the 440 parcel up to a development-ready status. As you know, there's a lot of different hurdles to getting that site on the tax rolls, and we think the LDFA is one tool that can be utilized by the township. Lastly, again, this is something I mentioned when I was here last, but it's important that we know as an Aerotropolis staff what the opportunities are for expansion in the region. We can talk about them anecdotally, but it's another thing to be able to really speak intelligently on those opportunities. And up until about a year ago, we didn't really know what the opportunities for greenfield expansion were. So we undertook a process last summer to identify all of the parcels in the Aerotropolis region that were 25 acres and above on the market and zoned for either industrial or commercial development. And we identified roughly 40 sites. We took it a step further, though, and identified through some partnerships that we have with DTE, among others, what the infrastructure was at the site. So are there utilities to the site? Is there stormwater and sewer? Is there a wetland? Is there a floodplain? Is it serviced by rail? All of the typical questions that companies or the site selectors that advise them ask when they first start looking at sites. It used to take us a day or 2 to respond to those types of inquiries, and now we have that information at the tip of our fingertips. And all of that information is also online on our webpage, so it can be viewed by yourselves or any of the companies that we hope are considering expansion in the region. So that's a very high-level overview and a very quick overview, but suffice it to say we've been working hard over the past year and a half, and while there are certainly bigger economic development organizations that have achieved more, pound for pound, I can honestly tell you that I feel like we have achieved as much as anybody over the past 12 to 18 months. So you can be certain that your dollars are providing value not just for you but for this region now and going forward. So happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Well, like I expressed last night, for years we paid these dues, these Aerotropolis dues, and we received absolutely little to no value for that. When you came on board, I seen it change. You had a plan, you laid it out for us, gave us the outline, promised feedback, you gave the feedback. You've been in communication, you've asked us to attend annual meetings, and I actually see headway. This is a very impressive, very impressive. So keep it up. It's wonderful that you've turned the Aerotropolis around to where it actually will pay off for us, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Trustee White?
Director Lewis, I too want to thank you for the achievements that you have given us. I was part of the original Aerotropolis, 2010-2011, and it was in a disastrous economic time also, and it was tough to entice anyone to do anything during that time. I attended the spring event, the annual event that you had, along with a couple of other elected officials here. And that was an excellent, outstanding event. The presentations were great. And you have proven to us, or at least to me, that this Aerotropolis can work and benefit our area, because we have a lot of land that may be available that's over 25 acres. And without any consternation at all, I think you've done an outstanding job, and I admire you for that. Of course, that's your line of work, and we know, but it helps us also to enlarge our tax base so that we can do more for our residents. What's coming down the tube that appears to be we're looking at should benefit our township. So I would myself like to thank you for the job and the hard work you're putting in, and the way that you are looking at Van Buren Township along with the rest of the people in the district. But sometimes I'd like to see if we could get together for a little conference on how your LDFA would function and what it could be. Would that be okay, Supervisor?
Absolutely.
And so that we'll know exactly what we're looking at and what we're getting for our money and what we can do to help out.
I appreciate those comments. Thank you.
I will add also, just since I sit on that board, and sitting on that board and up until 2 months ago meant that I sat against the wall and watched the people at the board table work. It's nice that Van Buren now has a seat at that table. And when he talked about LDFAs, he's talking about his LDFA, not our LDFA. We've done this with Grace Lake. But this LDFA actually gives us a tool in the toolbox to do some infrastructure upgrades where we're not left holding the hook like we end up with Grace Lake. It also is giving us a window into this state economic development. I have to mention Wayne County's Dave Schreiber's here from their economic development group, and they're very closely tied to Aerotropolis and its success. So I want to say thank you to you. And I'm all for doing this, which we'll be voting on later on. But I don't think he needs to stick around, do you?
Well, I'd like to ask you one more question. Will the Aerotropolis LDFA overlap the Grace Lake LDFA, or it will not be a part of that?
It's entirely up to you. It can be the entire township. It can be one little parcel. It can stand by itself. It can overlay with your DDA. It's entirely up to you.
Because the LDFA that he is talking about is approved by the state of Michigan, the state of Michigan Economic Development would have to approve it. And the only reason they would approve an LDFA is if it creates jobs. So, as I was told 2 years ago when I suggested the same thing, because it is a great idea, way for us to earn an extra 6 or 12 mils toward whatever debt we might have at the Grace Lake area, we were pretty much told that we would not be able to do that. But it is a great idea. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director, you do not need to stick around. Let me just, one last pull. Okay. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay. We're moving on now. We have the big day of the year for the accountants. We have Plant Moran. I'm used to saying director, but Dave Havlicek, who I've been around for 15 years, probably through the county, through the airport, through the Schoolcraft College, and doing our audits. So go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Supervisor. Again, my name's Dave Helisek. I'm an audit partner with Plant Moran, and with me this evening are Michelle Lewis and Aaron O'Connor. And we are here to present the results of the financial statement audit for the Township of Van Buren for the year ended December 31st, 2017. You should have 3 documents with you. By the look of the computers, they might be electronically or hard copies. But the largest document here is the financial statement. The majority of our presentation will be the graph package that Aaron's going to walk through, and then Michelle and I will walk back and wrap it up with our required letter of communications to those charged with governance. We will cover, I'll say, some of the audited highlights through the graph package, and the reason we're going to do that is a couple weeks ago, Aaron, Michelle, and myself did meet with supervisor, the clerk, the treasurer, some of the accounting folks to go over these statements in detail. So we went through it really fund by fund, I'll say note by note, and to ensure that the information that was turned over for audit was truly reflected in this document. So keep in mind, the information is turned over to us, we're audited, we help the township essentially put that information into the package that you see here tonight. And ultimately, there's only one part of this financial statement that is truly ours, and that's the audit opinion. The audit opinion is an unmodified opinion again this year, which is the highest level of assurance that we can give a set of financial statements. What that means is the statements as presented fairly reflect the financial position of the township as of December 31st, 2017. The change in that financial position, which means all the revenues and expenditures that are included within the document, as well as a statement of cash flows as it relates to the cash ins and outs in the water and sewer fund. Again, it is the highest level of assurance that we can give, and it's one that the township strives to achieve on an annual basis. So I'm going to turn over the presentation at this point to Erin to walk through the graphs. At the end of her presentation, before we go into the letter, we'll give the opportunity to discuss any questions you may have on any graphs she didn't cover. But as we're going through, if you've got any questions on the graphs, please raise your hand and we'll address them as we go along. Thank you.
Good evening. In front of you, you should have a graph presentation which outlines the township's financial activity for the 2017 fiscal year. We find it helpful to go through the graphs. It allows you to see trends from previous years. And like Dave said, if you have any questions, feel free to ask as we move along. Okay, so the first slide here shows your revenue in your general fund, which is the township's primary operating fund. Total revenue for the year was approximately $15.9 million. This is an increase of about $895,000 from 2016. One of the largest sources of revenue is property taxes for the township, which totaled about $4.4 million. This is a slight decrease from the prior year, which is a result of fluctuations in taxable value. Another large source of revenue is from state sources of about $2.8 million, and this includes your state shared revenue as well as your personal property tax reimbursement from the LCSA. That other revenue line item there includes items such as your charges for services, your license, permits, fees, some investment income. You can see that there was a decrease in that other revenue category there from last year. Last year, the township received the SAFER grant, which is a federal grant for the purchase of fire equipment. So that $1.3 million grant is included in that other revenue category last year that was not received in 2017. Finally, you have operating transfers of about $4.1 million, and this was transferred from the landfill fund to the general fund for operating purposes in 2017. Moving on to the next slide here, you have your expenditures for the general fund. Total expenditures for the year were about $14 million. This is about a $695,000 decrease from the prior year. As you can see in that blue section on the graph, public safety makes up a majority of the general fund expenditures. About 65% of your expenditures are within the public safety departments. There was also the largest change in expenditures within that department. Public safety decreased about $730,000 from the previous year. And similar to the revenue, there were capital outlay expenditures that were incurred last year with the purchase of that fire equipment within the public safety departments that was not incurred in 2017. The next slide we have here shows your fund balance for the general fund. Overall fund balance increased approximately $2 million from last year to about $7.9 million, and it is broken up into 4 different components you see at the bottom here. Your unassigned fund balance, which can be used for any purpose, is about $3.6 million. Your assigned fund balance, which has been identified by management for future use and includes items like debt service, retiree health costs, and capital asset purchases, is about $4.1 million, shown in the blue section here. You also have a small bit of fund balance that is restricted, and that's your cable peg fees, about $50,000, and then your non-spendable fund balance, which is just in a non-spendable form and includes your prepaid expenses. The last item we have here, up until this point, we've just been looking at your general fund, but obviously the township is made up of a variety of different funds, and this chart here just reflects the revenue that was received by the various different funds throughout the year. As you can see, a bulk of the revenue is within the fiduciary funds, which is not actually belong to the township and is mostly represented by your tax collections that's ultimately remitted to other authorities. One last thing to note on this slide is your water and sewer fund revenue increased about $900,000 during the year, and a majority of that increase is due to tap fees from new construction within the township, including the new Menards and hotel that is being developed now. If there's any questions, we'll take them, or I'll transfer over to Michelle to cover letter.
Questions? No?
Okay, so what I have in front of me today is the letter to the board, the third document that Dave referred to. And what this is, it includes any internal control deficiencies that we may have found during the audit. It also includes our required communication to the board. And then finally, it has some legislative updates and items, informational items that we thought would be of interest to the board. I'll be covering the first 2 items, and then Dave will come in and talk about the legislative items. So section 1 is the internal control related matters that were found during the audit. There were 3 items that we're reporting out here. One is considered to be what is called a material weakness. It is called the material weakness because it was a material amount. And what this was during the testing of capital assets, there was a land purchase and the DDA to be used for township purposes in the future. However, the accounting for that was unusual to the DDA, so it was not on the capital asset schedule. It was, however, recorded after we identified, and everything is stated properly in the financial statements. The other 2 entries are related to journal entries made during the audit and to past journal entries. So things that didn't rise to the level that they had to be recorded, but they were items that had to be reported to you to let you know that those were recommendations. And those 2 items were related to year-end closing entries. So none of the entries that we identified were things that you would be, that would affect your day-to-day decision-making. They were all year-end closing entries at year-end. And this is typical of what we do when we go through an audit. We identify journal entries. When we do identify those journal entries, we report that out to you to let you know that the books were corrected. The other letter, section 2, is the letter that says our responsibility to, or our required communications to the board. The first part of it talks about how we perform the audit as planned. The second part, we talk about significant estimates that are in the financial statements. So the OPEB liability, your unbilled water and sewer, your net pension liability, those are all significant estimates in your financial statements. The OPEB and pension liabilities are based on actuarial assumptions, and your water and sewer estimate of unbilled receivable is based on historical usage and usage from the last quarter of the year. In addition to that, the non-exchange financial guarantee is also a significant estimate in your financial statement. And what that is that's the estimate of what the general fund may have to pay for the LDFA debt in the future. On page 4, we talk about difficulties performing the audit, disagreements with management. We're happy to report there were none. If there were, you would know well before this meeting. Corrected and uncorrected misstatements. All of the items that we identified that needed to be corrected were corrected. There were 2 small items, one to adjust MBS balances to market value, and the other to record estimated chargebacks. So those are very small items that you don't get the numbers until a little later, or that management has decided that they're very small, so they did not need to be corrected. And then finally, there was no opinion shopping, going to get a different opinion than what we have guided you. That's all for the required communication with those charged with governance. Do you have any questions before Dave moves on to the legislative items? No? Okay.
Thanks, Michelle. Just real quick before I move on to the legislative items, a quick update, I think, on something that we've talked about now for a number of years, and that's the LDFA and the bond payments that are due. So I think this board is well aware the projected cash flow of the LDFA and the coverage of those bond payments have been tracked, I'll say, for a number of years. And under a pronouncement a number of years ago, when it became apparent maybe that the cash flow was not going to be enough to cover debt service at some time, a liability had went on actually to the township's financial statement because the township had backed those bonds. In working with Deputy Treasurer Bellingham, it looks like that cash flow shortage might be early to mid 2019. So just that this board's aware of it, that's out there. We know it's been coming, and every year it just gets a little bit closer. So I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that. We're still tracking it, but Sean's done a great job as far as not only tracking the costs, but estimating the monies that have been coming, that are anticipated coming from the LDFA capture. Going on to the legislative items, beginning on page 6. I hope you've had a chance to read through them. There's actually some updates from a couple weeks ago when we met. The uniform chart of accounts on page 6 about the third item down. Treasury's actually come out and delayed the implementation of the chart of accounts once again. It's moved back out of 2018 into 2019, and at this point it's an undetermined time as far as when that required change in the chart of accounts. So we know finance and the accounting department are aware of this. It's a required change that's upcoming in 2019. Page 7, for those of you who are following the state budget, we got real close. In fact, it's been agreed to. As far as it relates to revenue sharing, it looks like there's going to be projected increases in the constitutional revenue sharing for the upcoming year, and most of the other revenue sharing items as well. I think that another key part that came out of the revenue sharing as far as the budget, as far as revenues that are being returned to local governments, is related to the local community stabilization authority. So as you know, in the first 2 full years of implementation, there's been what we'll call excess monies that have been available after the reimbursement of the essential services. There was a formula that's been used to return those excess monies to the local units. There had been discussion, in fact, there were 3 different proposals in this past year, one from the House, one from the Senate, and one from the governor's office, that might tweak those excess monies and how they'd be returned. It looks like, and we're still making our way through the budget, it looks like, at least for this upcoming year, it's going to be status quo, and they'll use the formula that they had for the first 2 years. Probably legislatively, the biggest item in the last 6 to 9 months was the passing of Public Act 202 of 2017 in December. That really relates to the state trying to determine the funding status of pensions and OPEBs throughout the state, and determining whether or not, actually trying to determine how many of them would be deemed underfunded or not underfunded, for lack of a better word. It was really a roller coaster ride. For those of you who are following it, in November and December, we were working through with the league and the Township Association. Different versions of this bill came through. At one time, it looked like noncompliance could involve the implementation of an emergency financial manager, which wasn't very popular with anyone. Fortunately, that was left out of the final bill that went to the governor's office to sign. What did come out of it, though, is some required reporting that will need to be done on an annual basis, and it's really focused on those 2 items I had mentioned, the OPEB funding status as well as the retirement funding status. And at the top of page 10 of the letter, you'll see the criteria that's been laid out. In the next week or so, the Township Finance Department will be submitting a Form 5572 that will be reporting the funding status based on the audit results to Treasury, and kind of working through that. You'll see that there's 2 different criteria, one for the OPEB, one for the retirement system. I'm going to start with retirement system because there's better news there. For it to be deemed funded or not underfunded, they're using a percentage of funding at 60% or higher. So if your funding status in your pension system is higher than 60%, it's not deemed underfunded. You report that, and you kind of go on your merry way on the pension side. As a result of the audit that was done, information that was provided by the actuaries, the township is at 73% funded in your pension fund. So township will file the form. It's a pretty short form. I suspect you're going to get an okay, and you'll be able to move on when that information comes back from Treasury. As it relates to OPEB, that number, as far as an underfunded status, baseline is at 40%. The baseline itself, the township currently is at 11.3%, which I don't think is terribly surprising. If we're trying to compare that to the pensions versus OPEB, really since pensions have been established in the state of Michigan, there's been part of the Constitution that all actual required contributions need to be made on an annual basis, or you'd be violating the Michigan Constitution. Up until about 10 to 12 years ago, as it related to OPEB, these numbers weren't even measured. I mean, we knew that there was an obligation out there, but the accounting standards were never required to report it, and there was clearly no legislation that was ever required to fund it. There's still no legislation required to fund it, but the reporting requirements started under GASB 45, and they're going to be revised under GASB 74 and 75. 74 was implemented this year, and 75 is implemented next year. And you're going to have a true feeling, as it will be reported on the financial statement, what these OPEB liabilities might look like. So what's going to happen is you're going to file this 5572. It's going to show this funding status, and you will get a communication from Treasury that will say, you're below the threshold, and then you'll have the opportunity to apply for a waiver. And then you'll get together as a group and try to explain where you're at, how you got there, and any plans you might have for addressing this liability. You'll then submit that up to Treasury, see what they have to say, And if they say, well, you know what, we're not going to apply the waiver, which could go either way, you'll just put together a corrective action plan on a go-forward basis as far as how you're going to address this liability.
Trustee Miller?
If I can ask you reiteration, you said 11.3% is what the township is funding
Yeah.
it right now currently?
Correct.
That we should be at 40% and that you're not alarmed by that? I am.
No, I'm sorry. So, maybe I misspoke. I said, I don't think we're all, any of us are surprised that the number's at 11.3% because it had never been measured, and since it never had been measured, really monies had never been put aside to start funding that liability. Should you be concerned about it? I think you should be aware of it, and then you've got a plan on how to address that liability, which the township has started to do. There are monies, you've started to fund this liability, which up to 10 years, when GASB 45 was implemented back, and I'm going to guess about 10 years ago, there was no assets that were applied against that. So townships addressed it, they're understanding it, but it's a pretty significant liability that you are trying to address.
Just to be clear, though, I'm thinking of every single solitary government that touches our border, that we are probably 10% ahead of them.
Yeah, and I can't
Two
speak to
wrongs
that.
don't make it right, though.
Well,
No.
it's the way you fund this type of thing.
Right.
And we are funding, we have a long-term debt fund. We are funding
But
just in
it's
case we need
underfunded.
it. Yeah.
So to be fair, so I want to make sure we're clear. I have the number in front of me. It's on page 61 if you want to reference there. That liability, not the assets that have been put against it, that liability, the total liability is about $25 million. So trying to address that over a $10 million period, I'm sorry,
Okay,
10 million.
But let's, I just got to make this clear, though. At this point in time, I don't really know of very many governments out there that are planning on setting up that OPEB fund for 100%. They're planning on paying it off like a mortgage, like you make your payments as you go along, which is the way we've done for 100 years, and the way we'll continue to do it. But we will slowly but surely build that group, and we are building a long-term debt fund that should we need it should we not need it for other long-term debt, it could be applied to the OPEB in its entirety.
My perception is, and sooner or later, you're gonna have a wave of retirees coming through. We're already seeing it, and it'll be greater. And if it's not funded properly, that's gonna cause a problem in the township. 11%, even though other townships could be under us, is not enough. And we've talked about that, so I hope to see it funded accordingly, raise that a little bit, and make some plans, because.
You set the budget.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now I'll take it from my perspective on what I've seen. I feel that the township has actually been very proactive once you address the liability as far as trying to fund it. I would agree with the supervisor, getting to 100% on a $25 million liability in a short period of time, based on your budget.
Right. But we
is
also
not-
have a healthy fund balance, so we're in good shape, so we could add more
Correct, yeah.
to it.
You do have money, and you've got to figure out, how you're going to handle that. You will need to, in your communication to Treasury, just address on how you're going to handle that liability. We're not asking you to get to 100% and what you're going to do
Right.
to get to 100%.
What's your
You've got
plan?
in place on a go-forward
Yeah.
basis.
The return funds we're going to be paying, but at the same time, we're going to have to pay their retirement plus put money into the retirement fund.
We are banking a long-term debt fund,
Okay.
but we will not lock it up in an OPEB. I don't know what they're going to do in the future. 10 years ago, they didn't have Medicaid.
It's a house of cards that's,
Yeah.
more than likely going to crumble sooner or later, because, we've been not funding properly for 20 years or longer, and so it's going to be tough to catch up. And that's why a lot of businesses and corporations now are not even offering retirement. I think that is the change in perspective. You know, they're giving some kind of money to offset it, but they're not even getting into the retirement business because they know that sooner or later it's probably not going to work out. But I'm just trying to be realistic. And I think the whole business world, operation world, has taken a big turn with that aspect over again. And I'm sure it's going to come sooner or later to even the UAW, probably, you know, that they won't have the big retirements that they once did. They can invest themselves, and they're more than happy to invest themselves, but the company isn't going to be as forthcoming with full benefits, health benefits, and things like that.
I spend most of my time on the governmental side, so I wouldn't have a great comparison to what happening on the commercial side.
As far as the salaried employees and the union employees, I don't think there's a problem with retirement because that's a paid, 401k is paid ongoing, or for 457B. But my biggest concern is with MERS and the police union. But an even bigger concern I have is the OPEBs with health care, because health care is going to just expand, and I don't know how we're going to be able to keep up with the cost of the policies on health care. So, and I've offered suggestions, and there's a lot of ways that we could look at that and still have health care for our employees, but it may be in a different plan than what we're currently in, because, you know, you can't work for a company or a government for 35 or 40 years and not have retiree health care. That should be a given, especially in today's economy and society. We all are entitled to health care when we become senior citizens. I have direct experience with all of this. So to me, the health care situation is where we need to address some serious issues.
Thank you. Any other questions? Treasurer
I'll
Bud.
just make a comment. As you know, we adopted the merit plan, which definitely saved us a great deal in what we were paying for our health premiums. We also have our employees paying part of that premium. We've also have, when we look at what we put aside for OPEC, it includes the water department, which has a bigger share. They're much better rated than the general fund is. The DDA is almost fully funded because the DDA is funding their employees for their, and we have put money aside each year in that fund, which is a specific fund, which what Dave is talking about is 11%. However, you also know we've set up the long-term debt fund, and with the money that's in there, there will be coverage for that. The MERS plan right now is about 77% funded. That's with both units, command and the patrol. Patrol is better funded because, of course, they have more officers in that unit than the command unit does. But they are fairly well funded, and we have been able to keep up the cost of our seniors currently with our yearly budget, and it hasn't been a problem, so we've been able to keep that money set aside. So I don't look for that really to being an issue with what we have decided to do to start putting away for this problem.
If I could add on, I mean, even if you take a look at what's in the trust, I just look, 2010, that number was zero. There was no money set aside. 2012, your actual report, 849,000. 2016, it's 1.6 million. Now it's up to 2. Van Buren Township's been about as proactive at funding this as many of the communities that I've seen. That asset number is growing and growing and growing, just sitting in the trust.
Right.
From something that just, you know, when it was start getting measured over a short period of time, I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed to find as many communities that have been proactive as far as funding once it was identified. There's just numbers are really there's some really big numbers here.
Through the chair. I guess for me, being proactive is increasing that amount. Right now it's at 11.3%. And even though you made some great points about how the DDA is already funded, but we're not. And we're not being proactive enough because we need to increase that amount. So, and I'm sure we can talk more about that and work on that together as a board.
We've actually, we have talked about in the past, just to, the long-term debt fund specifically calls out OPEB as being one of its long-term debt issues. And the idea of locking the money down in some other thing, other vehicle, especially when healthcare seems to be going through all these changes, I don't believe we should lock it down. We should keep it into something that's a little bit more liquid that we can flow it to where we need it. Medicare and Medicaid, I don't know. They've all been changing all these years.
Yeah, they
Do
will
we go to a single
continue.
payer system? And all of a sudden we've got money locked up that the government decides their money is part of the system? I don't know.
It's still underfunded, and we're like.
It's too bad we didn't start the long-term debt fund before, a couple of years ago when we got here.
Even
It's
further
too
back.
bad they didn't do it, 10 years ago. But,
We can
what
do
do
it
we
now,
know?
though.
We have,
It's gonna be hard to catch up.
It was started around 2010 or something like that. We started at $100,000 a year, wasn't it? Sherry?
Yes.
okay. Is there any other questions
No.
besides OPEB? And it was a good year for us.
It's very good year. Very, as Michelle had indicated, not only good year, but a good year for the people who are reporting and recording the information. So the information, we really didn't have much in the way of really material findings that we'd report, which means the information that's being supplied by your accounting folks is reliable information. You're making pretty big decisions throughout the year. You're really relying on the information that's provided by your department, and your accounting and finance departments have done a tremendous job of accumulating that information, providing to you throughout the year, providing to us available for audit.
So our first full year as a board, we increased revenues by nearly $1 million, and we decreased the expenses from 2016 to 2017 by almost $700,000. So, good year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, gonna move forward. Getting into, before I go on, is there any other announcements that anybody wants to make? I do have a few. I just wanted, before everybody starts turning their televisions off. The fireworks are coming up. They're the, excuse me, when are they?
Excuse me. Don't we have to accept the,
We're actually
audit?
we're actually going to as part of our regular meeting.
Okay.
Okay, but you're correct. Saturday, June 30th, will be the Van Buren Township fireworks. They'll be at Beck Ball Fields. I hope everybody can come out. They Glow Products concessions are out there. It is a great time for everybody out there. In addition, Weight Watchers will be starting up in the first week of July at the Township Hall. If you're interested in joining, it's the only one in town. Does anybody else have an announcement before we go into our voting section?
Through the supervisor.
Treasurer Putt.
Just like to make an announcement that township offices will be closed on July 4th. That's on a Wednesday, so the offices will be closed. There will only be one board meeting in July, and that will be on the 17th.
Okay, we're moving on. Next item is public comment on business of the day. Does anybody have any public comment regarding any of the business that we're going to be voting on today? Dave Schreiber from Wayne County, please come on up.
Good evening. I am Dave Schreiber. I'm with Wayne County Economic Development, and I think I'm going to be preaching to the choir here. Just a couple things that are on your agenda tonight. Regarding the Aerotropolis, I've been in economic development for about 30 years, worked for Oakland County, which is considered one of the most aggressive, one of the most successful economic development programs. So I know a thing or two about attracting business to the area and supporting business in the area. At least I hope I do. And I just want to reiterate what you've already figured out for yourself, that what Rob and the Aerotropolis are doing is absolutely the right types of things to generate the types of leads and prospects and successes that we need in this community. I couldn't add an additional thing to the plan that he is successfully implementing right now. Everything he's doing are all the things that we did when I was at Oakland County, and it led to a lot of success. So while I was at the annual meeting, Rob, you know, if I took the survey, I probably didn't say that my impression of the Aerotropolis improved after the meeting, because it was really already very high, both the Aerotropolis and Rob's leadership in that. So, and I know I'm echoing things that have been said here. The other, other reason I'm up here is because, of course, we do look for new opportunities for new investment and new jobs in the community. What you're going to be voting on tonight with the rezoning is one piece in the puzzle of what could be a really significant new investment to our communities this year. So I hope you're supportive of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public? Hearing none, we're going to move on. New business. We're going to start off with our consider approval of the 2017 annual audit of all township funds. Can I get a motion?
Through the chair.
Treasurer Bud?
First of all, I'd like to say, I would like to thank the township staff. Carol Toe stepped in and did a marvelous job with the job that she just took over when Vern Morris retired. I would like to thank my deputy for all the help that he does. And just about every department that was asked, I think staff would say that they were pleased with the results. Once again, Dave Halasek and his staff did an excellent job, and it was nice having him in the building. It was even nice having lunch one day, so thank you very much for that. And it's just nice to be appreciated, and we appreciate you. And with that, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the 27 annual audit of all township funds as presented.
Support.
I have a motion by Treasurer Bud, supported by Trustee Miller. Hearing no further discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? This motion passes. Thank you very much. Have a good day, Dave.
I'd just like to comment that those young ladies were in that room locked up every time I was here. So
For a long time.
Even in the evening or whatever, and I never saw them move from their desk.
Next item is to consider approval of 2018, of Resolution 2018-11 opioid litigation resolution, which is approval for authority to represent and professional services agreement between the township and Summers Schwartz. Excuse me.
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Frazier,
Support.
supported by Trustee Miller. I'm the presenter of this, and so that the people in the audience get an idea of what this is about. This opioid resolution is a declaration that the unlawful distribution of prescription-controlled substances has created a public nuisance and a serious public health and safety crisis with the citizens of Van Buren. In the state of Michigan, there are currently 107 prescriptions that are written for every 100 men, women, and children. To date, Wayne County has had 345 deaths. At this rate, they will have 845 drug overdoses this year from opioids. Most of these were men, 65%, and white, 53%. The range actually averages from 4 years old to 75. There was only one 4-year-old, the next one was 18. But amazingly, the largest group that is growing is the over 70-year-old. In the first 4 months of this year, Van Buren Township has had 17 Narcan life-saving events. We are paying a heavy price from this opioid abuse. Together, Van Buren with the Township of Canton, Westland, Livonia, and now Northville Township, and I feel that the other 12 Western Wayne Township, Wayne County communities are going to band together with Summers Schwartz under this resolution and sue. This resolution has created this resolution calls out that they have created a public health and a safety crisis in the township, and it is a public nuisance. And this resolution allows Van Buren to pursue all civil remedies which may be afforded under the law as against the manufacturers and/or wholesale distributors. They have caused or contributed to the public nuisance and serious public health and safety crisis involved in opioid abuse. For that, I'd like to ask everybody to vote for this, and I think we already have decided. It came before us, the contract before, we had some problems. We fixed them. The lawyers agreed that they're fixed. We met yesterday on it. If anybody else has any comments? Trustee Miller?
When you first took office, Supervisor, I came
Yes.
to you and I said, we as a township need to do more about this opioid crisis. You in turn went to the Wayne County Mental Health Authority Board that you sit on. You got the Narcan kits made available to all the police, public safety personnel, got them trained. This is just another level of doing something that we need to do for our residents because this is an epidemic crisis. There's board members here that have lost loved ones due to opioid addiction and overdose. So I'm happy that we're all joining forces and taking a step and saying this crisis has to stop. And it stops with us. So this is a great thing. Great day.
Anybody else? Trustee White?
Can you give us a overview on how the attorneys are going to be paid their fees?
The attorneys are going to, they're on a contingency. They will get the expenses, and then they will get 1/3. Whatever's left over goes to the community. Or communities. I can tell you the last time that there was a lawsuit like this was a cigarette lawsuit. And we should remember what happened in the cigarette lawsuit. The state of Michigan decided that they would sue on our behalf and they would take care of us with the proceeds. I don't recall us getting that money.
Through the chair, how many townships already?
Northwood Township, Canton Township, Westland, Livonia.
Is there any more on the horizon?
Yes, now that they've made the changes, Canton and Livonia signed the old agreement that we turned down, and the new agreement is going through quicker. So Northwood Township was the first, Westland just went, and now us.
Great.
All right, hearing no further questions, I'm calling, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? This motion passes. Okay. Next item. Having trouble talking today, so who would like to make a motion on the next item and read it in its entirety?
Sure.
Trustee Martin.
I make a motion that we approve the first reading of ordinance 06-19-18 to rezone parcels 83-021-99-0002-000. Parcel 83-021-99-0001-000. Parcel 83-022-01-0003-004. Parcel 83-022-01-0004-003. Parcel 83-022-01-0005. Parcel 83-022-01-0006-001. Parcel 83-022-01-0007-001. Parcel 83-022-01-008-003. parcel 83-03-99-0005-000, otherwise known as the Harold Smith Farm at 50015 Michigan Avenue and 50061 Michigan Avenue, from R1C Single Family Residential to M1 Light Industrial with conditions.
Okay, I have a motion and I have support. Thank you very much. Do we really need to call off all those numbers on those?
Yes.
I'm actually not sure. I don't believe you do. I believe you can reference the
Can we find
agenda.
out? Because these numbers are getting ridiculous.
I believe you can reference the agenda and it has the same effect.
Thank you. Director Akers, could you give us an overview, since we've been going over this on the Harold Smith Farm?
Yes, the request before you is to consider the first reading of the rezoning of the Harold Smith Farm, which is located on the south side of Michigan Avenue, just west of Denton. The request is to rezone the property from R1C Single Family Residential to M1 Light Industrial with conditions. One of the things that I had explained at work study yesterday, and I'll reiterate, is the difference between a regular rezoning and a conditional rezoning. A regular rezoning simply changes the zoning of the property from one district to another. A conditional rezoning, while it does change the zoning from one district to another, it also adds additional conditions on it. Those conditions are offered voluntarily by the property owner, which means we cannot require them to do so. And in this instance, the conditional rezoning agreement that has been submitted by Mr. Smith, who's the property owner, requires that any future development maintain a 400-foot buffer from Mr. Smith's eastern property line, which is immediately adjacent to Denton Village. So just to give a brief history of this request, the board has seen the master plan amendments come forward over the last several months. With regards to specifically the rezoning, township staff and representatives for a potential buyer held a public informational meeting prior to our planning commission meeting on June 10th. It was well attended by residents from Denton Village, and through that we were able to address comments and concerns that individuals had with the rezoning. We held a public... Yes.
Summarize what the complaints were?
There were some comments with regards to potential traffic patterns. A lot of the comments were concerning the potential impacts of the development on the adjacent site. Truck traffic was something that was addressed, and as indicated, the potential buyer who's looking at the property is not anticipated to have very large amounts of semi-truck traffic, potentially very, very little semi-truck traffic. And also the site, because of the 400-foot buffer, will not have access through Denton Village. The road access will be off of Michigan Avenue. One of the concerns, one of the items that was brought up at the informational meeting, which I actually was not aware of, is when the property was zoned single-family residential, one of the stipulations and a deed restriction that was put on the property was that the access to the property would be through Denton Village. So the primary access would be off Cross Street, which is it's a residential road. It's also a gravel road. So with the potential putting 200 homes back there, it could add an additional potential 2,000 vehicle trips per day, which was very concerning to a lot of the individuals who lived in Denton Village. Now, one of the things that the applicants or the potential buyers have done and had done at that meeting and at the Planning Commission meeting was they created renderings which showed what the potential building or the shell of the building could look like in reference to certain areas in Denton Village and certain areas off Michigan Avenue. And they also demonstrated the different type of berming and screening measures that they were going to use to be able to mitigate the impact of that building on Denton Village. So not only is there going to be a 400-foot buffer, and not only is Mr. Smith going to maintain the houses and the barn on the property, which he's going to continue to live in, but there's also going to be a 10-foot tall berm with 8-foot tall evergreens placed on top. So, the intent behind the 400-foot buffer was to be able to mitigate any impacts that were going to be on Denton Village from the potential use on the site. And I think a lot of those comments were addressed.
Members were satisfied with once they understood the buffers.
I believe so. We held a public hearing on June 13th at the Planning Commission meeting. And just to give reference, at the June 10th meeting, there were probably, and I didn't do a count, but there were approximately 50 people in the room asking questions. When we came to the public hearing on the June 13th meeting, we had 10 people show up, and 3 of those 10 people, 3 of them commented. And of the 3 comments, one was from Mr. Schreiber to the Planning Commission. The other 2 were from residents who lived in the village, and both were supportive of this particular project.
Through the chair. One of the concerns was about, will this lower the taxable values of the homes? Can you explain that, please?
With any potential development, it's hard to anticipate what the potential impact of the development is going to be on property values. I mean, it could increase it, it could decrease it. One of the things we look at through zoning, I'm sorry. One of the things that we look at through zoning is we try to mitigate negative impacts on adjacent properties, and part of that 400-foot buffer is intended to mitigate any potential impacts and limit, frankly, any potential impact it could have on the adjacent properties in Denton Village. How the market sways, it's really difficult to determine, but because of the type of facility it is, as proposed, it was research and development. Those are typically, higher salaried jobs that are being put into there. It's potential that individuals who are employed there could want to live in the area, and that could have a positive impact on property values. So when you look at some of the negative impacts that could occur, because it's not a substantial truck traffic user, it's going to be set back considerably from the village. I'm very comfortable that you're not going to have the negative impacts on the adjacent village that would substantially reduce property values. That was kind of a long answer to a short question, and I apologize, but I think we have individuals who are very conscientious of Denton Village and very concerned about the impact that the development could have, and I believe they're doing everything they can to mitigate that.
Treasurer Putt?
I talked to some of the residents after the Monday meeting, and some of them had even left before the meeting ended because I think they were satisfied, and the ones I talked to afterwards were satisfied with this project rather than, they weren't happy with homes, they didn't want trucks, so I think they were pleased that this project was going to go through and with the buffer. And then after because I said on the Planning Commission, I talked to 3 couples afterward, and they were pleased it was moving forward and that the Planning Commission had directed it to the Township Board.
Through the chair. There will also be another hearing, won't there be?
Yes, so this action is just to consider the rezoning request. The applicant will still be required to get site plan approval from the township if they decide to move forward with the property. One of the things that the applicant has committed to is having another public informational meeting for the site plan, which after our conversation today is tentatively scheduled for July 10th. So July 10th at 7 p.m. in this room, we'll have another public informational meeting to discuss the actual site plan and what's going on the site.
I'd just like to thank your office and the Aerotropolis and the potential buyer developer for working with the township and showing consideration for our residents' concerns and working through a process so that everybody understands what is going to take place there. I'm sure this is not something that Mr. Smith ever thought he'd see in his lifetime, but things change and development happens, and it's a good thing for the township, for Mr. Smith, for the residents there, and I think we went about it in the right way. And I'd just like to compliment everybody on that, their efforts, including Aerotropolis for bringing the client to us.
Trustee Martin?
Yes, I'd like to say that this project, first of all, the 400-foot buffer is pretty unprecedented in zoning. procedures. And I would like to commend Mr. Smith, first of all, for taking his neighbors into consideration when he come up with this conditional rezoning. I think that showed insight on his part, and I'm sure they appreciate his forethoughtness, and I appreciate it. So I believe this would be something that's good for the township. I was also at the meetings of Planning Commission public hearing and also the informational meeting, and I didn't sense any opposition at all. In fact, residents, they said they were in favor of it, as opposed to, 230 to 250 homes or something that could really have a big impact on the community. So I think this is pretty good for the township.
All right, I think that's it, so I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We will see you in 2 more weeks for our final vote, right? June 17th.
July 17th, excuse me.
All right.
Thank you.
Next item, to consider concurrence with the Van Buren Township Downtown Development Authority to approve the 2018 Aerotropolis dues.
Supervisor, I make a motion to consider concurrence with the Van Buren Township Downtown Development Authority to approve the 2018 Aerotropolis dues, and I never thought I'd make that motion, but I'm happy to do so. Support.
All right, I get a motion by trustee Miller, support by trustee Martin. Do I have any more, anybody? Nope, nope. Hearing no further comments, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next item is reports. We have the December 2017 budgetary report in your docket, and so the January and the February 2018 budgetary reports. We are now down to public comment for non-agenda items. This is public comment. Does anybody wish to make any comments? No? Okay. Board comments for non-agenda item. Does anybody wish to make any comments from the board?
Oh, I'm
Just-
sorry. Go right ahead. Please.
Miller, Frazier.
Supervisor, I'd like to thank Al Haydes for working with me to look at the Huron River Drive bridge that is in disrepair. He has brought out engineers from Wayne County to look at that bridge and to clean it up, to get all the concrete chunks that were everywhere, and to also address the safety of it. There's rebar hanging out of the sides of the bridge, and which is dangerous. It is slated to be repaired in 2020. I am, along with the commissioner, working to get that date pushed up, hopefully, so I'll keep you informed. But again, I'd like to thank the commissioner.
Thank you.
And the commissioner did say he was going to give us a list of the
He did.
projects.
Yes, that was not on it
Trustee Frazier?
for this year.
I'd just like to bring to the attention the EQ public hearing that's going to be held. I can't remember the exact date. I didn't bring it with me. It's for their permit. Do you remember, Director Akers?
Posted in the paper. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I can't remember the date right now. June. So.
I apologize. I don't have the date off the top of my head. I can post it on the township website tomorrow if the board would prefer.
Is the public hearing posted on the township website?
I do not know. I'll have to confirm that. I
We
know
need
it was
to-
posted in the
we-
paper.
You know, I'd like to recommend that we put all public hearings first thing on the page to get people's attention. It's difficult, I find it difficult to navigate our page to find where the agendas and under government, and then you go to the department. You know, I think we need something, announcements or a page or something that just puts it out there. Because this is a very important, permit. And people who have concerns in our community about EQ expanding should be informed on what's taking place. And I'd just like to see, you know, more publicity done rather than, I mean, the Independent is our only paper, but, you know, we should be informing as much as we can, so. And the other thing is on Cobblestone Ridge. I would like to say that I'm disappointed that we have received as board members at least 2 communications from people that live in Cobblestone Ridge who have large investments there in homes and condominiums. And the township's response is there's little we can do. I hope that the township learns from this experience with this developer and that we change our way of doing business, because the things that those people who live in Cobblestone Ridge are having to put up with, large bales of hay covered with blue tarps sitting, attracting rodents, grass grown up. I know that the township paid somebody to go in there and cut down some of the grass, but this developer has been an ongoing problem for the township for years, since he started there. He's building supposedly a condominium at the entrance of the complex, yet there are no signs posted on how to get a hold of the developer, when the property will be for sale. You know, there's so much not going on there. It's just sad for our community, but I feel bad for the residents that have to put up with this day after day, and having to write us continually. They provide us pictures. I drive over there, I try to see if anything's been improved. Very little has been improved. You know, they're going at a snail's pace on building, but that's the way our permits work, I guess. But I would like us to be wiser the next time that we get into a situation like this, because we want our taxpayers, we're here to represent our taxpayers, and those people are paying hefty taxes in that complex, and they should be represented the best they can by the township, and that saddens me.
Through the chair, can I ask the supervisor if
One
any
second, hold on.
violations?
Does anybody else want to make a comment on non-agenda items? No? Okay, go ahead.
Like I said, have we issued any tickets for grass that's overgrown? What, you know, Miss Gray has made several email attempts with our board, and give us a status update.
Every one of her emails have been responded to.
Okay, so what was the response?
With regards to the grass cutting, the grass was cut yesterday. It was posted last week. The developer is going to be cited for consistent failure to perform.
Randy is the developer.
Sorry.
I can't hear you.
I think you should say his name publicly because it's important.
No, he does not. And he's got the microphone right now, please.
Can you repeat that?
The developer is going to be cited for consistent failure to cut the grass. The grass company that was out there not only cut the grass, but they brush hogged the bushes and some of the larger things that are growing around the foundation. So with regards to the grass, that's the current resolution. I do know that our ordinance officer who covers that area of the township does go through the subdivision a couple times a week looking for issues, looking for grass cutting issues. With regards to the building materials and the hay that was on there, the developer who was managing that site had an active building permit on the property until it was the first or second week of June. And so as soon as that building permit expired due to non-activity, we sent out a notice of violation to the property owner about maintaining the building materials on site. When we issue a notice of violation, they get 10 days to be able to correct the violation. So that 10 days is up on June 26th, so that's next week. So if the building materials are not removed by next week, which is June 26th, they will be cited.
Thank you, because those building materials, and I'm talking about the hay that's covered, has been out there since, I think, winter, the end of winter. I first noticed it. And you know rodents are breeding in that. That's just not healthy. That's a health concern. There's children out there. So I'm glad to hear that you're watching the dates on those permits, and I look forward to hearing back from you, as I'm sure the residents will.
Okay.
I just wanted to know about basement number 9.
Nothing.
Has anything happened with that?
Well, actually, our engineer has approved plans to repair basement 9 and basement 11. We issued an email to them. It was a week or two ago that the plans were approved, subject to them providing us with a set of plans that have been stamped by a professional engineer. They have yet to provide us that, but they have submitted plans. They have been approved. We're just waiting on them to be stamped.
We respond to every email with our ordinance group.
Well, Supervisor, we may respond, but the way it was brought to our attention, I think it was a week or so ago, and when I came in that day, and I think I talked to you, Ron, you said that, or maybe it was Director Best, he said that they had met that morning. To me, it seems like this has been such a long, lengthy problem that it should be immediate. We shouldn't have to, if on June 26th or whenever the time is up for those tarps, if he doesn't move it after we ticket him, the township should have people out there removing that stuff. I mean, because it's an eyesore. Those houses are $300,000.
Okay.
Go ahead. All the trustees receive the letters from Ms. Gray, but we do not receive a response. Would it be possible to copy all the elected officials on the response to her so that we're in the loop and we know what's going on?
That way we don't have to ask questions
That
that
would
could
be
be
good.
answered ahead of time.
That's a lot of letters, but okay. Sure.
You could just put copy to us
Yeah.
when you send it to
Sure.
her.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Well, that's what I asked for, just copy.
It's not just Rachel. There's other people concerned there.
There are.
Yeah.
There's other people that
And,
we've received letters from.
and I'm not going to defend the developer one bit. We have become babysitters to this developer, and I'm getting darn tired of it. Unfortunately, the law in the state of Michigan is the law, and he has bent it to the point that there's not much we can really do. We issue, if there was, you'd have to write the law.
There
There are
has to be.
citations, we could put pressure on, we could communicate. There's a lot we can do.
Yeah.
And to some extent, we have been, but
Yeah, we've
this-
done everything we
this
can
developer-
do.
Come on.
We've done everything we can do. In fact, we've even gone out there looking for people to buy his property from him.
That's good.
That's how much we want him gone.
All right.
I appreciate concerning your efforts, but still, again, we receive all the letters from those residents, but we don't receive any response or reports back to them, and we're out of the loop on it, and you know, therefore, it's hard for us to say anything. She's sending all the letters to us also. I don't know for what reason, but she wants to let us know what's going on. But on the response, we also need to know what's going on.
And I'd like to know the state of their association. Those people are paying money every month to have their lawn cut
You know
and
what?
their
What might be
water.
a great idea is if you guys form a subcommittee on this, because quite frankly, we've been getting pushed into this for long enough, and you don't seem to understand the issues that we're dealing with. I mean, because there's a lot more issues, and maybe by law, you guys can figure out a way to change them.
Well-
Would you three like
No,
to be
hang
in that
on,
committee?
1 minute. 1 minute. Just because you don't like our questions.
No.
That we're asking
I
because
don't.
we don't have correspondence that you sent out. So the questions are being asked tonight. Yes, Ms. Frazier did start the conversation. You want to throw a subcommittee together to
If you can
to
figure
what?
out a way
Punish
to do
us for
this,
asking that? That's not right.
if you can figure
We're
out a
the
way
board.
to
We
fix this, then that would be great.
that is up to this board and not one subcommittee. You need to correspond with us so we can correspond with the residents. We're just asking for answers. And a subcommittee at this point, I don't,
Okay, we've actually
on,
already
let's not be
answered,
ridiculous.
we've already answered all of these. We've given you the codes, we've given you the ordinances, we took you down the whole historical lane of where we were, where we've come from, and what we've done. We've already answered all these. We're just rehashing because he keeps on doing the same thing over and over, but he knows the timeline that he has to get it done, so he gets it done. He has to get a building permit. He's got a building permit inspection every month this year. We can't take his building permit away. January, February, March, April, May. He's
so
had a building
subcommittee
permit.
would be ridiculous at this
What?
point.
Then wouldn't it be beneficial to not to change our ordinances so that we don't continue to issue another permit? You can get 2 permits and that's it. And if you don't show any really effort at finishing your development,
And you could
Van
figure
Buren
that out in a
Township will
committee.
not.
And you could figure that out in a
Continue
committee
And you
if
can
you'd
head
like.
that committee.
Supervisor, but we are getting the same questions most of the time, mowing the grass, weeds,
Mm-hmm.
bad basements, everything else.
It's the same answers too.
We don't have the answers because we
It's the
don't
same answer
get
we
them.
gave you every time. Every
Yeah,
time,
right,
it's the
but
same
I
answers.
don't know what you've told them. I don't have a
It's
clue
the
as to
same
what
thing
you've
I've
told
told
them.
you
I
every
heard that
time.
Weiss was over there cutting the grass. This is what I heard. I saw their trucks in there. Okay, they're landscapers, they cut grass. I saw them in there like 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago. So were they the ones that were cutting the grass again this week? Do they have a contract with Van Buren Township to cut grass in there?
No, we're
Or
not cutting
we just doing it on a,
We did not cut that grass, we have a contract. But,
we
we
did
did-
at the township's bidding. The township
We did-
told
we never-
them
we did?
to cut it. Yes.
We cut the grass a couple, weeks ago, I don't know. But,
Okay.
yesterday, we did contract with Weiss to cut the grass.
Okay,
It's
and we
my
did a
understanding.
couple
Hog in there?
weeks ago.
Yes.
Yes. And a couple of weeks ago, we also did, we contracted with them to do it. So, I'm just saying,
I was
maybe we should
misunderstood
get,
when I was
are
told
they
I'm
the
bringing a
ones
brush
that
hog
we
in.
contract with?
Okay,
When we have grass built up and we have to cut property, or we just use our own?
Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry. What was?
Do we subcontract to someone like Weiss when we have delinquent grass
Yes,
cutting?
yes.
Okay.
we do, but they brought in heavy equipment on this, so.
Must have been pretty high.
I
So
was-
at that point that you're having to subcontract this out, are you writing citations?
Yes.
Yes.
And
For
are they
sure you're
paid?
writing.
Are they
What?
paid? Do they pay the
They're new
citations?
citations.
I'm not sure if the
Bozzy,
civil
I had a meeting with
infractions have
Bozzy
been
this
paid.
morning on this. He wrote, yes, he did.
So they must have got a ticket a couple of weeks ago.
I don't know about that.
Well, they didn't cut their grass, and the Weiss had to go in there and cut it for them. So they must have got another ticket. This week-
They could have gotten a warning if they didn't do it, we would have gone in and done it anyway.
If they don't do it within 72 hours, I believe, the township can ticket them and do it themselves.
Okay, this has gone far longer than 3 minutes, so, and we're not really getting anywhere. So,
But we still don't have the answers. When you reply to to residents' concerns like that,
yes,
why can't you copy it to us so that we know what's going on?
I can do that in the future. But I've already done that in this one, over and over.
So you can't forward it to us?
It'd be the same thing I forwarded over and over before,
that's
but I'll do
okay,
it,
but-
I'll
Well,
continue
if you're
doing it. I don't mind.
Then hit reply all.
Okay?
Right, reply all so that we know.
Actually, what I do is when I get those, I send it over to Ron and Matt. I wait for them to reply to me. Then I have them reply to Randazzo, and then after we get the answer back from Randazzo and ordinance, then we reply to Rachel
Right.
or whoever it is that's
It would
complaining.
just help us
We
to
will.
address these
So at that
residents.
point in time, I'm pretty much not writing it anymore, so.
But, you know, it's ridiculous to have something that's been going on for 10 years, a developer that isn't doing his job over there. But the crux of the matter is the fact that he's supposed to be developing that complex. Yet he sold the models, there's no for sale signs in there, and there's no way to contact to find out how much property is in that complex.
Okay.
That's the real key.
Okay, we're going over and over the same thing
Okay.
again, okay? All right, hearing no more board comments, we've already gone through it all. I guess we're into adjournment, okay?
I make a
to
motion
adjourn.
to adjourn?
Support.
Okay. Got a motion of adjournment, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? We're adjourned.